Saki mbwembwana kwele mchele kwa kuku kumwaga. Sako na wapenda yatusema nitasikia.
Jumbo. My name is Marcia Grabowecky. I work as a professor in psychology at Northwestern University, where I study how the mind and brain interact in a field called cognitive neuroscience. I also teach on Buddhist psychology, and this is why I'm recording this video for you today. Buddhism is, of course, a religion, but in many ways, it's also really a system of psychology. It's a psychology that's focused on how we can learn to live optimal lives where our well-being and the well-being of others is improved. And this system depends on three parts or three components that are similar to what you would see in a tripod or a three-legged stool, where each component is essential and supports the other components so that it works as a whole system. And the first of these components is a moral and ethical foundation for what we're doing. The second is a series of guiding concepts and principles, which is a conceptual understanding of how we can accomplish this. And then the third component is rather a large set of practices, how we can train our minds and turn these other principles into behaviors and eventually habits. Now, the moral and conceptual foundations are based on a couple of essential ideas. And the first one of these is that everything that we can understand, everything that we can perceive, is fundamentally interdependent with everything else. And that means that nothing is really separate from anything else or entirely independent. And this is at first a really surprising idea because we really think that we're completely autonomous, independent individuals, that the objects we interact with are completely separate from us and so on. But if we reflect on this idea a little bit, we can understand that it's maybe not quite surprising. We just have to look at things a little bit deeper. And one example would be how we came to be the people that we are in this particular time. And if you think on that a little bit, you'll realize that all of your ancestors are necessary for you to be here the way you are. Not just your parents or their parents, but really an endless stream of ancestors. And those ancestors don't even stop with humans. They go all the way back to the beginning of life on our planet. And so if humans evolved differently than they did, then we wouldn't be the same people that we are now. So that's one example. But beyond that, not only are we dependent on evolution, we're dependent on our planet coming to be in the way that it did and developing in the way that it did. The oceans developing, the plants growing, all of these kinds of things. And the existence of the planet is dependent on the existence of the solar system, which is in turn really dependent on the entire universe. So we can see that our being here right now is a function of actually the entire universe being the way it has been. And as another example of this, a Buddhist teacher called Thich Nhat Hanh suggests if you look at a piece of paper, you can see clouds in it, you can see rain in it, you can see the trees, you can see the loggers who harvested the trees, you can see the people who manufactured the paper, you can see the people who worked to feed the loggers who brought the trees to you, and so on. There's no particular end to this ability to see what's in the piece of paper. And Thich Nhat Hanh refers to this process as interbeing. And that boils down to I am because you are. So we our being is interconnected in that way. Now, the moral and ethical foundation of this system is based on this understanding that we're really not separate from other people, other living things, or even from our environment. And because of that, I can't truly be happy if I try to act in ways that harm others and only benefit myself, because by harming others, I'm effectively harming myself as well. And we understand that by helping others, we increase our own well-being and well-being of everyone else as well. Now, this is not an idea that's unique to Buddhism in any way. It's something that's present in all of the world religions and all of the wisdom traditions of human beings. The second essential idea for Buddhist psychology is the idea of impermanence. And this is the understanding that absolutely everything is constantly changing. Nothing lasts forever. everything is impermanent in this way. So some of these changes happen really quickly. An example of that would be if you're watching water flowing, you know that the water is changing moment by moment while you're looking at it, or watching clouds moving by in the sky, you can see them moving very quickly. Other changes are much more difficult. So if I have an object like the bowls behind me here, they look like things that are really permanent. They're very durable. They might have been around for a long time. They'll probably outlive me. So it seems like that's something that's actually really permanent. But in fact, the metal that's in the bowls wasn't always in that form. It was iron ore, and the iron actually came out of water in ancient planet history. And the ore itself had to be processed by human beings, turned into sheets of metal, and then the metal itself, in this case, worked by hand to form the bowl. And the bowl itself is not the same as it was when I first bought it. At that point, it was quite shiny, and now it has this kind of soft surface to it, which, if we have some science training, we understand this is a process of oxidation that creates a tarnished surface on something. And that oxidation is actually molecules in that metal interacting with the air and changing over time. So that would be an example of something that's changing really slowly. When we notice change, we're often distressed by it. This thing doesn't look new anymore, more distressing, change in climate, aging, sickness, and even death in friends and family members. And these are changes that are very distressing to us. But our ability to grow, to change, to learn, to evolve in any kind of way is also dependent on change. So there are many positive aspects of this change as well. If seeds couldn't turn into plants, we couldn't grow food for ourselves, for example. And so when we understand and accept this truth of impermanence, we can become happier because we now have a way of understanding things that's more in alignment with reality as it truly is. So this moral and ethical foundation of the system is based on the understanding that we aren't separate, and because of that, we can't be truly happy when our actions harm other people. So keeping that in mind. Now, the final component of this three-part system is a set of practice to change conceptual understanding into behavior and habit. One of those many practices is mindfulness. And this essentially means, you may have heard of it because it's quite popular right now. Mindfulness really means being fully present for our own experiences. So as we're there, as we're present with the experience, we notice when we're distracted and our minds come back instead of habitually trying to distract ourselves, be busy with other things, especially if we're trying to do something that's unpleasant. So we're often unaware of how our minds drift away when we're trying to do something. And as we cultivate this ability to be mindful, we can notice that pleasant things actually can become more pleasant. You can enjoy things much more. And the other aspect of this is even unpleasant things can become less of a source of pain and suffering to us when we're fully present with them. So we can limit their scope to exactly what they are instead of allowing them to spread out and make us have a lot of negativity, anger, frustration, and so on. We just deal with things as they are. So paradoxically, paying attention can actually make unpleasant things less unpleasant as well. And so as we practice being mindful, we gain more insight into how our own minds work. We move towards a way of being that supports our own happiness and the happiness and well-being of others as well. And I hope that this brief introduction has been helpful. Asante sana, kwaherini.
Nanipaga moyo nikianza kulia chozi nafutia.